Blink-182, Adam's song, the first song on my list of the top 30 songs of the 90s. Let's have a listen. Let me know as well in the chat if you have any guesses for what songs might appear in this list. Of course, we've seen some of the artists that might appear in it, but which particular songs? Oh, Thomas, that is a good thing that I have not meant. Thomas just suggested in the chat, Free as a Bird, i.e. the Beatles. Forgot that the Beatles technically have some 1990s songs. So they're not going to appear in this list. That is a good point though. That's a good sort of like trick. A trick artist of the 90s.
I never thought I'd die alone. Another 6 months I'll be unknown. Give all my things to all
Yeah,
my
they're right.
friends. You'll never step foot in my room again. You'll close
Oscar, one of the two songs that you've mentioned will be on this list.
Remember the time that I spilled the cup of apple juice in the hall. Please tell Mom this is not her fault. I never conquered, rarely came 16, just held such better days. Days when I still felt alive. We couldn't wait to get outside. The world was wide, too late to try. The tour was over, we'd survive. I couldn't wait till I got home to pass the time in my room alone.
So this song, as far as I'm aware, is about Blink's original drummer who struggled with the touring lifestyle that Blink were going through when they first started. And there was that line there which is just brilliant. Couldn't wait to be home so I could sit pass the time in my room alone. And I know that feeling of like when you're doing something you love but you're doing it far too much and it kind of ruins it. Yeah, this is number 30 on my list of the top songs, my personal choices of the top songs for the 1990s. If you didn't catch the first 3 minutes of the stream, there was a whole array of audio issues, but we're here, we're ready to spend the next few hours counting down some of the best songs of what is personally one of my favourite decades of music. We got through the first song and there was no more audio issues. Excellent. Right. So, to anybody who's only just joined us now, this is a list of my top 30 songs of the 1990s. Every artist is only really allowed to appear once, but there will be exceptions for the odd artist that I think just I couldn't not put more than one in. But anyway, here we are, number 29, Bittersweet Symphony by The Verve. This song's obviously infamous for the legal problems it had because it samples a Rolling Stones song, but it doesn't really sample a Rolling Stones song. The string line at the beginning of the song, which you'll soon instantly recognise, I imagine, was lifted from a strings arrangement of a Rolling Stones song, but crucially, the bit that was lifted wasn't actually in the original Stones song, which makes it absurd when you find out that due to the legal problems they had with not getting the sample properly cleared, Keith Richards and Mick Jagger of the Stones got 100% of the royalties of this song up until fairly recently, when that decision was kind of resolved. But yeah, wild legal battle story behind the song. But just on a musical level, I think the song is excellent. The way it combines the strings with more traditional Britpop, well, not traditional, but typical Britpop arrangement is fantastic. For a Britpop song, it's not that guitar heavy, and I think that's really unique about this song. So let's have a listen to Bittersweet Symphony by The Verve. Yeah, Drewley, who's just joined the chat, I agree. The 90s has a special place in my heart. I don't know, it's almost like there's a nostalgic edge, but of course I was very young in the 90s. I was born in 93. But there's something special about 90s music, I think. I wonder what street this is that they filmed this video on. Somewhere in London.
It's a bittersweet symphony that's live, trying to make ends meet. You're a slave to money, then you die. I'll take you down the only road I've ever been down. You know, the one that takes you to the places where
So I'm getting distracted by the music video. One of the background actors there sort of slightly undersold his performance there, I think. It's too late to point out which one. David Defender is mentioning the volume is good. Thank you, yeah. I noticed that you mentioned the music on the Blink song was a bit quiet, but one of the problems with using YouTube videos is sometimes the volumes aren't consistent, and the Blink one was actually particularly quiet. So I didn't want to turn it up for that, because then this one might be too loud. I'm glad that we can still hear both me and the music. My two favourite things.
Well, I've never prayed, but tonight I'm on my knees, yeah. I need to hear some sounds that recognize the pain in me, yeah.
Common People by Pulp, that's a good suggestion. I do like Pulp. Not necessarily sure they'll make the top 30 though. This is a good example of a song where the song is extensively a loop, basically, just of the same 4-bar kind of chord progression with that string riff, but it's all about the dynamic changes. The verse it slightly cools down, for the chorus we get that higher string melody come back in, and the vocal line only consists of two fairly similar vocal parts. I'm actually so intrigued about where this is shot. This means a real shot. I'm gonna Google it. Where was the biggest Hoxton Street, London. Right. I wonder if anyone. There must be people who have tried to reenact this. It's the sort of thing that if this had come out now, every YouTuber, anyone on YouTube would be trying to replicate it all over TikTok as some stupid thing. Back then, if you wanted to replicate it, you'd be getting your VHS camera out and awkwardly walking down the high street. Yeah, someone has finally recognised Elliott Smith from the picture at the grid at the beginning. That grid of artists that we had on screen. There was one artist that people hadn't recognised, and admittedly, his face was obscured behind my face at one point. But that was Elliott Smith, who is one of my favourite artists of all time, and will be appearing in this list, as you can imagine. Gabriel, thank you for joining the chat. Number 30 was Blink-182 with Adam's song. At every 5 song intervals, there will be a recap where I show you the songs that we've listened to so far. So if you're only joining now, don't worry, you will be brought up to speed with what you have missed. Just having a quick look at the chat. Around the World by Daft Punk is Pingu fans' prediction for the list. Possibly. I do like Daft Punk. That song, maybe not so much. Rage 300 Boy is wondering whether Ben Folds 5 will appear in this list. And you might not be disappointed. But anyway, in the meantime, number 28. I'm interested to know how many people in the chat know this song. Setting Sun by the Chemical Brothers, featuring Noel Gallagher, which isn't said here. It doesn't specify that here, but he is the featuring artist on this. And the Chemical Brothers did a couple of songs with Noel Gallagher, Setting Sun and Let Forever Be, which were both quite clearly sort of love letters to Tomorrow Never Knows by the Beatles. But that is probably a big reason why I really like this song. It's a good example of the electronic and dance music of the 90s intersecting with a bit more like rock and Britpop. It's a really interesting song. Just saying, Gen Z Boar says they know this song. So at least one person in the chat knows this song. But now all of you are going to know it because we're going to listen to it. Jonker Jesse 73 asked which Radiohead album I should start with to get into the band. I personally would suggest OK Computer. There's a reason why that album was such a massive commercial success. But then where you go from there is kind of up to you, because if you want something more grungy, go for the Bends. Something more electronic, go Kid A. Something a bit more sort of modern in Rainbows. Recreating Tomorrow Never Knows, that is not a small undertaking. The Great Help is asking in the comments about Biffy Clyro. He was surprised that Biffy Clyro didn't make an appearance in one of my previous videos. I do like Biffy. They're not the sort of artist that makes my top list, but there's definitely a select few songs by them which I really like. Yeah, I've seen it in the comments. Millennial Animal Music is saying that they think In Rainbows is a good album for newcomers to Radiohead to start with. And I do agree, it is kind of a throw up between In Rainbows and OK Computer. And it's almost like those two albums are like, if you're a millennial who likes Radiohead, you probably like In Rainbows. If you're a Gen X who likes Radiohead, you probably like OK Computer. Or Kid A maybe. Like a generation ago. Videos. This is a band called Ocean Colour Scene, who very much fit into the Britpop world of trying to emulate the 60s and the 70s. They've got loads of great songs. I sometimes feel like this band slightly flies under the radar. I'm interested to know if any of you guys know this band that well. This is one of their most well-known songs. It's a great song, and you'll instantly hear the 60s-esque influence at play. But that is a quick way to my heart, is to be inspired by 60s and 70s vibe music. So this is The Day We Caught the Train by Ocean Colour Scene.
Never saw it as the start. It's more a change of heart. Rapping on the windows, whistling down the chimney pot. Blowing up the dust in the room where I forgot. I laid my plans in solid rock. Stepping through the door like a troubadour.
Tom, thank you so much for choosing to subscribe. I really appreciate that. By the way, if anyone didn't know, you can subscribe to this channel for free if you have Amazon Prime. So subscribing on Twitch is different from subscribing on YouTube. Subscribing on Twitch is like you give me a little bit of money and then you don't have to watch ads anymore. And if you have Amazon Prime, you can actually do that for free. So just let you know, if you have Amazon Prime, consider subscribing to me on Twitch.
Sips another rum and coke. Told a dirty joke. Walking like Groucho, sucking on the number 10. Rolling on the floor with a cigarette buns walled in. I miss the crush and I'm home again.
Yeah, definitely got that I Am the Walrus vibe. With the distorted vocals, definitely contributes to that.
It's a brighter day. You and I should ride the coast and wind up in our favorite coast just miles away. Roll a number, write another song like Jimmy heard the day caught the train. Oh, la, la.
Supergrass is another good suggestion. They definitely fall into this slightly, like the kind of slightly Britpop-y sound of the 90s.
Tomorrow. And you and I, when we're coming down, we're only getting back, and you know I feel no sorrow. When you find the things that get wilder, don't you want days like these? When you find the things that get wilder, don't you want days like these? When you find the things that get wilder, don't you need days like these?
Yeah, Pinky fan, I see what you're saying. They dress like people now are. People now just dress like the 90s, right? It's that whole like fashion is secular. But anyway, that was The Day We Caught the Train by Ocean Colour Scene. Number 27 on this list of my top 30 songs of the 1990s. If you're just joining us, we've had a whole lovely time with loads of technical difficulties. Hopefully that won't happen anymore. I can see someone new in the chat here, like Lemon Fire Brigade. I wonder if there will be any Blur. I wonder. Portishead was 90s. That's a good shout. And they're a band who could make this list. But anyway, moving on. That was number 27. Number 26 on my list is Alanis Morissette, Hand in My Pocket. I think this album has some great songs in it. Personally, the song Ironic that she does kind of winds me up because the lyrics aren't actually about ironic things, and it's not very clear whether that was intentional or if that was actually some sort of weird meta level of irony. But actually, this isn't that song. This is Hand in My Pocket. I love this song. Very sort of summery vibe to it, I think. Let's have a listen. Radiohead, yes. So that was Hand in My Pocket by Alanis Morissette, number 26 on my list, and I think that means, yes, we now have our first recap. We'll be doing a recap every 5 songs on the list. So this is the first opportunity to anyone who has only just joined us recently or didn't survive the barrage of technical difficulties I had at the beginning. This is what we've listened to so far. Adam's song, Blink-182. We didn't answer the question. Is it Blink 182 or Blink 182? Or Blink 182? Bittersweet Symphony, The Verve. Setting Suns, The Chemical Brothers, featuring Noel Gallagher of Oasis. The Day We Caught the Train, Ocean Colour Scene. And Hand in My Pocket, Alanis Morissette. We've got a whole range of songs to go through, and at least on my personal opinion, they're going to get better and better with each one we go through. So, let's hit the next one. Sheryl Crow, All I Want to Do. I think that Sheryl Crow maybe doesn't get the credit she deserves. I think, particularly until quite recently, actually, there was this kind of idea that rock music was the territory of men. And if a woman was playing something which, playing music which, by most rights would be considered rock music, or at least alternative music. If a woman was doing it, it was almost seemed like they were more of a pop star. Like it's easy to assume that they didn't write their own songs and they're just a bit of a, record label creation, but that's not the case. And Sheryl Crow is a great example of that. I think this is a really great song. Personally, for me, it was between this song and If It Makes You Happy, which is also by Sheryl Crow. That's another great song, but this is just a classic. I love this song. I love the storytelling of this song. It creates... it's hard to listen to the song and not imagine being in Los Angeles. All I Want to Do, Sheryl Crow.
This ain't no disco.
Yes, Elliott Smith will be on this list. Blink 182 is what Lingus is saying.
This is LA.
I think you're probably right, but I've always said Blink 182.
Have a little fun before I die. Since the
You
man
say it fast
next to
enough,
me,
I will
out of nowhere. It's apropos of nothing. He says his name is William. I'm sure he's Bill.
The song's definitely got a Stuck in the Middle of You vibe, if you know what I mean, Steelers Wheels.
I wonder if he's ever had a day of fun in his whole life. Now we are drinking beer at noon on Tuesday. The bar that faces a giant car wash. The good people of the world are washing their cars on their lunch break, hosing and scrubbing as best they can in skirts and suits. They drive their shiny Datsuns and Buicks back to the phone company, the record store too. Well, then nothing like Billy and me.
The whole
All I wanna do
does an artist write their own
is
songs thing is interesting, because obviously in the 50s we had artists like Elvis, we had artists like Louis Armstrong and Peugeot that I mentioned earlier, who didn't write their own songs, but that wasn't really considered an issue. It was like they were a interpreter of songs. Like Nina Simone, she didn't write her own songs, but she interpreted songs and she added her own spirit to them. But I think it was when you started having artists like the Beatles who were penning their own songs, which created this idea that you had to be authentic.
And Billy likes to peel the labels from his bottles of Bud. He shreds them on the bar, then he lights every match in an oversized pack, letting each one burn down to his thick fingers before blowing and cushioning them out. He's watching the bottles of Bud as they spin on the floor.
This song, by the way, came out the year that I was born.
And a happy couple enters the bar, dangerously close to one another. The bartender looks up from his one ass, but all I wanna do is have some fun. I got a feeling I'm not the only one. All I wanna do is have some fun. I got a feeling I'm not the only one. All I wanna do is have some fun.
Tin Pan Alley referred to the Great American Songbook stuff, was largely the 30s. But the thing is, with all those songs, the Tin Pan Alley songs, they were re-recorded by different artists. So a lot of the most famous recordings of the Tin Pan Alley songs came out later in the 1950s.
Otherwise the bar is ours. The day and the night and the car wash too. The matches and the buds and the clean dirty cars. The sun and the moon, but all I wanna do
Jens is asking if this is the version where they edited out the Billy character. I didn't know about that, and I also haven't been listening to this enough to notice. Why would they edit him out?
Just begun.
Something wrong with it?
All I wanna do is have some fun.
Guitar Geek 69, thank you for joining the chat. That is a very good suggestion, and you might not be disappointed.
Until the sun comes up over Santa Monica Boulevard. Until the sun comes up over Santa Monica
Oh, you're saying that Billy was in the video, not in the song. I thought you meant they edited him out of the song, as in the lyric. To be fair, this is the first time I've seen the music video for this. There we go. That was Sheryl Crow with All I Want to Do. Okay, Hamish is just mentioning that they can't hear me over the music when I'm talking over the music. Yeah, it's hard to get a good balance because with each YouTube video, the volume is often a bit different, and it's hard for me to gauge what the balance is like. So yeah, do mention in the chat if you can't really hear what I'm saying. I'll turn the music down or whatever, or I'll turn the mic up. So let's move on. That was All I Want to Do. Sheryl Crow. Now, really changing vibe. I mentioned in my previous streams, both the previous streams I've done, the 2010s and the 2000s, they did contain some hip hop. But on both occasions I said how 90s hip hop is a type of hip hop which I prefer to listen to. And this album, although it is a very kind of like entry level basic hip hop album to listen to, it's a great album. Now, if you're wondering why it's called 2001 and yet it came out in 1999, that's a whole story with Dre's record label that he'd left. I think the long story short is that he wanted to call the album The Chronic 2000 because his first album was called The Chronic. Then it turned out that he couldn't do that because they were going to release a greatest hits collection called The Chronic 2000 against his will. So he decided he would call the album The Chronic 2001. But then they decided they couldn't use the Chronic name anymore because it was like a trademark. So instead he just went with 2001, despite the fact that the album was released in 1999. So that's why it's got the weird name. There's loads of really good songs in this. This is my favourite one. I think, although it's a very simple chorus, Eminem's delivery in the chorus is just so satisfying. The rhythm of what he says is just so satisfying. And I think that's for me the mark of good rapping. Obviously, the lyrical storytelling is a big part of it, but the rhythm of it, because in many ways rapping is like a percussion instrument, right? And the rhythm and delivery of good rappers is so satisfying. So anyway, this is Dr. Dre featuring Eminem with Forgot About Dre. Thanks for checking in, Lingus. Yeah, the video will appear on YouTube at some point.
But I've been low-key, hated on by most these niggas with no cheese, no deals and no G's, no wheels and no keys, no boats, no snowmobiles and no skis. Mad at me cause I can finally afford to provide my family with groceries. Got a crib with a studio and it's all full of tracks to add to the wall full of plaques, hanging up in the office and back of my house like trophies. Did y'all think I'ma let my dough freeze? Hold please, you better bow down on both knees. Who you think taught you to smoke trees? Who you think brought you to ODs? Easy-E's, Ice Cubes,
yeah, with the title, I think the original like Chronic 2000 thing was just like, you know when people say 2000 after something to make it sound like the next better version of it, like the Nimbus 2000, and then it just wound up becoming a bit of a mess, and called 2001.
Y'all are the reason that Dre ain't been getting no sleep, so fuck y'all, all of y'all, if y'all don't like me.
Yeah, I know what you mean. When I first heard this, I was put off by the synth sound.
Nowadays, everybody wanna talk like they got something to say, but nothing comes out when they move their lips. Just a bunch of gibberish, and motherfuckers act like they forgot about Dre.
How rhythmically
Nowadays,
satisfying
everybody
it
wanna
is.
talk like they got something to say, but nothing comes out when they move their lips. Just a bunch of gibberish, and motherfuckers act like they forgot about Dre. So what do you say to somebody you hate,
So
or
satisfying.
anyone trying to bring trouble your way?
Listen to how Eminem's dynamic
intensity
just rises and rises.
One day I was walking by with a Walkman on when I caught a guy, give me an awkward eye. And strangled him off in the parking lot with his dark and eyes. I don't give a fuck if it's dark or not. I'm harder than me trying to park a Dodge when I'm drunk as fuck. Right next to a humongous truck in a 2-car garage. Hopping out with 2 broken legs trying to walk it off. Fuck you too, bitch, call the cops. I'ma kill you and them loud ass motherfucking to the mid-80s.
Yeah, I think that string synth sound is one of those sounds where it's not quite, doesn't quite sound like a synth, and it also doesn't quite sound like a real, violin. So it's in that kind of uncanny valley. But if you just take it for what it is, you can take it on its own terms. I think you have to imagine a universe where stringed instruments didn't exist, but we had this sound. Would we still think, oh, that sounds a bit weird?
Everybody wanna come to me like it was some disease, but you won't get a crumb from me, cause I'm from the streets of. I told them all them little gangsters, who you think
yeah, good rapping is incredibly impressive. What you think I sold one of those things that where if rap hasn't got flow, it just doesn't work. Like if singing is out of tune.
Trying to get this damn label off, I ain't having that. This is the millennium of aftermath. It ain't gonna be nothing after that. So give me one more platinum plaque and fuck rap, you can have it back. So where's all the mad rappers at? It's like a jungle in this habitat. But all you savage cats know that I was strapped with gats when you were cuddling a cabbage patch.
Nowadays, everybody wanna talk like they got something to say, but nothing comes out when they move their lips. Just a bunch of gibberish, and motherfuckers act like they forgot about Dre. Nowadays, everybody wanna talk
like at the end here, they drop out all the instrumentation, but Eminem can still carry the meter.
Nowadays, everybody wanna talk like they got something to say, but nothing comes out when they move their lips. Just a bunch of gibberish, and motherfuckers act like they forgot about Dre.
I love that. Excellent. Fire song. I agree. And we've got through 3 songs and you can still hear me, I assume, unless you're all just being polite or you've got very good at reading my lips. Next, we're still in kind of like the slightly hip hop vibe. Beastie Boys have always been Beastie Boys always get called a hip hop artist, but really they straddled hip hop and rock and sort of punk, and they kind of did rock rap before Linkin Park and all of that did it. And this is a great example. This is by all measures an amazing rock song by a hip hop artist, I guess. Genre is subjective, but this is a fantastic piece of music. Sabotage, Beastie Boys. Yeah, you can tell when you watch this music video that Beastie Boys began ultimately as a comedy act in the 80s. They never lost their sense of humor. What a tune. Absolute classic. Sabotage, Beastie Boys, number 23 on my list of the top 30 songs of the 1990s. If you're just joining us, we will be recapping shortly by having a look at what we've already gone through. But in the meantime, we're going to get another bit of Eminem. We had him featuring in Dr. Dre's song just a minute ago. But I know Eminem is a basic pick for rap music. He's the ultimate entry level guy, but he is really good, sort of undeniably good at what he does. And this song, I must warn you, I originally put the censored version in, and then I just hated the censored version so much because so much of the rapping has been pulled apart by all the censoring. So this is the uncensored version. So if you don't like it, then I'm very sorry about that, but just giving you a fair warning now. But yeah, Eminem, my name is, and such a good sample as well. I don't know if you guys know the keyboard part, or the keyboard part for this song. The sample that it's based on is lifted from the end of a Labi Siffre song. So not even like a notable part of the song, like the song from which it's sampled. There's the whole body of the song, so you wouldn't recognize it yet. And then there's an outro bit that comes along, and it is the sample made famous by My Name Is. And I'm pretty sure this was produced by Dr. Dre. So in a way, we're getting our second installment of Dre and Eminem here. My Name Is Eminem.
Keep breathing, nice and even. Last 1, 2, 3, 4.
Tom and Harriet in the news.
Hi, my name is what? My name is my name is Slim Shady. Hi, my name is my name is what? My name is Slim Shady. Hi, my name is what? Excuse me. My name is Slim Shady. Can I have the attention of the class for 1 second? My name is Slim Shady. Hi kids, do you like violence? Wanna see me stick 9-inch nails to each one of my eyelids? Wanna copy me and do exactly like I did? Try sit and get fucked up worse than my life is? My brain's dead weight. I'm trying to get my head straight, but I can't figure out which Spice Girl I wanna impregnate. And Dr. Dre said,
That's a good lyric.
Shady, you a basehead. Then why's your face red? Man, you wasted.
well, since age 12, I felt like I'm someone else, cause I hung my original self from the top bunk with a belt. Got pissed off and ripped Pamela Lee's tits off and smacked her so hard I knocked her clothes backwards like crisscross. I smoke a fat pound of grass and fall on my ass faster than a fat bitch.
Jens,
Sat
boy, I
down
see you
too
mentioning
fast.
M
Come here,
and
slut
M's.
lady, wait a minute. That's
When
my
I
girl,
was-
dawg.
when this
I
song
don't
first
give a
came out
fuck.
and I
God
was
sent me to piss the
7
world
years old.
off. Hi, my name is what?
Of
My
course,
name
although we
is-
shouldn't have been listening to
my
it,
name is
everyone at school knew
Slim
Eminem.
Shady. Hi,
But
my
I
name
thought
is-
it was
my name
M
is-
and M.
My name is Slim Shady.
Because,
My
you know,
name
at the
is
time,
what? My name is my name is
it makes more sense, right? Eminem with an
My
E.
name is
Doesn't make much sense, does
My
it?
name is what? My name is Slim Shady. My English teacher wanted to have sex in junior high. The only problem was my English teacher was a guy. I smacked him in his face with an eraser, chased him with a stapler, and stapled his nuts to a stack of paper. Walked in a strip club, had my jacket zipped up, flashed the bartender, then stuck my dick in her tip cup. Extraterrestrial, killing pedestrians, raping lesbians, while they screaming, let's just be friends. 99% of my life I was lied to. I just found out my mom does more dope than I do. I told her I'd grow up to be a famous rapper, make a record about doing drugs and name it after. You know you blew up when the women rush your stands and try to touch your hands like some screaming Usher fans. This guy at White Castle asked for my autograph, so I signed it. Dear Dave, thanks for the support, asshole. Hi, my name
I've always wished I could see in the studio when they record those little, like, background gags and stuff, like, little voices in the background. They had so much, character to the song, like, keep it lighthearted.
Slim Shady. Hi, my name is what? My name is my name is Slim Shady. Stop the tape. This kid needs to be locked away. Dr. Dre, don't just stand there, operate. I'm not ready to leave.
Yeah, this song actually has multiple censored versions, like different levels of censored versions.
Am I coming or going? I can barely decide. I just drank and fit the
This is
vodka.
the
Dare me to
most
drive?
uncensored
All
version
my
as
life
far as
I
I'm
was
aware.
very deprived. I ain't had a woman in years, and my palms are too hairy to hide. Clothes ripped like the Incredible Hulk. I spit when I talk. I fuck anything that walks. Come here. When I was little, I used to get so hungry I would throw fits. How you gonna breastfeed me, mom? You ain't got no tits. I lay awake and strap myself in the bed with a bulletproof vest on and shoot myself in the head. Bang! I'm steaming mad. And by the way, when you see my dad, tell him that I slit his throat in this dream I had. Hi, my name is what? My name is my name is Slim Shady. Hi, my name is my name is what? My name is Slim Shady. Hi, my name is my name is my name is Slim Shady. Hi, my name is my name is my name is Slim Shady.
So I believe this is the last bit of hip hop on this list. I do like hip hop a lot, but as people have noticed on previous streams, I definitely have a preference for like rock and alternative and that sort of stuff. So, but yeah, the 90s. If there's going to be an era for rap in my book, it will be the 90s. And Eminem, even if he is kind of basic number one, the only rapper that your granny could probably name, he is good. MLV4, thanks for joining us. Yeah, the reason you couldn't find the stream is probably because this is the third incarnation of it, because it got technical difficulties that are yet to return, assuming that you can still hear me. But anyway, moving on. And also, by the way, MLV, there will be a recap soon, so you'll find out what you missed. Building Steam with a Grain of Salt by DJ Shadow. This is a fantastic example of sampling. This song is basically all comprised of samples. And anyone who says that sampling isn't creative or is cheating, I'd like to see you make this by sampling. It's not easy, and it is almost more creative in my opinion, because you have to work within the restraints of the samples that you're working with. Anyway, DJ Shadow is a fantastic, I guess you would say, instrumental hip-hop artist, or maybe instrumental electronic artist. They definitely are between genres in my opinion, even flowing into like ambient music perhaps. This is a great song. Building Steam with a Grain of Salt, DJ Shadow.
From listening to records, I just knew what to do. I mainly taught myself. And, you know, I did pretty well, except there were a few mistakes that I made that I have just recently cleared up, you know. I'd like to just continue to be able to express myself as best as I can on the instrument. And I feel like I have a lot of work to do still, you know. I'm a student of the drums. And I'm also a teacher of the drums too, you know.
Pink Floyd, I see it's mentioning in the chat that Pink Floyd certainly did do some sampling early doors for rock music, for any music really. They thought about sampling quite early on, but not this type of sampling. Not there when you're getting. What they did is they sprinkled a few samples into their music, whereas this is comprised of maybe even a dozen different songs spliced together, reimagined into something new.
Assimilating and distributing all he receives slowly until it becomes a part of him.
I don't know if the Beatles ever did sample. I can see you mentioning that in the chat there. They used mellotrons, but although they are technically using samples, that's not the same idea of sampling, because it's like a mellotron, someone's already done the sampling for you, if you know what I mean. MLV4, I see you mentioning the avalanches there. If you like the avalanches, a friend of mine called David Hartley did a great video on the avalanches, and David Hartley actually edits some of my YouTube videos. So yeah, if you wanna give him a bit of love for doing that, check his YouTube channel out and his video on the avalanches. Oh yeah, Paul sampled the bass line for Saw Her Standing There. Yeah, so the bass line for Saw Her Standing There by the Beatles was lifted from Chuck Berry. I can't remember what the Chuck Berry song was, but yeah, that's not really sampling in the true sense of it, where you're taking part of a record, an actual recording, rather than part of a composition, which is what Paul did. Usually, when someone takes part of a composition and repurposes it, we refer to it as interpolation. Or interpolation. Interpolation? Yeah. Yeah, there's too many Davids in the YouTube community. Hence why I have to use a fake surname like Piano. Yeah, the mellotron is all samples, but you could also make the same argument that, like modern keyboards and sample libraries, they are all just samples, right? But we wouldn't refer to that as sampling per se. Revolution number 9, David Finfer. Yes, you're right. That is an example of sampling, because there are various little elements in there. Even I think the number 9 bit is actually in. I can't believe I forgot about that, actually. That's really well brought up. The number 9 element of Revolution number 9 was taken from some test recording from an Abbey Road library, where some audio engineer had been going through tapes and just recording his voice on them just to check or something like that, and he said, test recording number 9 or something, and that was what John used for his infamous track.
Like to be able to continue to let what is inside of me, which comes from all the music that I hear, I'd like for that to come out. And it's like, it's not really me that's coming. The music's coming through me. The music's coming through. Music's coming through. Music's coming through. Music's coming through. Music's coming through.
Building Steam with a Grain of Salt, DJ Shadow. I love that song. For me, it fulfills the need of ambient music, where you can almost sort of just zone out to it, which I think is one of the many fantastic features of music. I think some music gets you excited, some music makes you reflective, some music makes you emotional, some music makes you want to dance, and different moods for different days. So this is what we've listened to so far. Anyone who has only just joined us will have an opportunity now to see all of the things you missed. We started with Adam's song, Blink-182. Then we had our first set of technical difficulties. Then we had Bittersweet Symphony by The Verve, Setting Sun by the Chemical Brothers, and that's when we had our second technical difficulties. And then we, so far, in a new stream that has kept going, and I'm assuming you can all hear me still. I will stop asking that at some point, but I'm very paranoid. Anyway, we had A Day We Caught the Train by Ocean Colour Scene, Hand in My Pocket, Alanis Morissette, All I Want to Do, Sheryl Crow, Forgot About Dre by Dre, Sabotage by Beastie Boys, My Name is Eminem, and we just listened to Building Steam with a Grain of Salt, DJ Shadow. And now to Elliott Smith. I saw some people mentioning Elliott Smith in the chat. He was one of the faces on that grid at the beginning, one of the only faces that people didn't immediately recognise. Elliott Smith is very much one of my favourite artists of all time. He is possibly number 4 on the list, on my ultimate list. And that list does not, I don't say that lightly. It's taken me 15 years to decide on whether Beatles are number 1 or number 2, and Radiohead are number 1 or number 2. I only last year decided what number 3 is, and I only this year decided, okay, Elliott Smith can be elevated to the dizzying heights of number 4 in my personal favourite artists. As a consequence, he appears in this list twice, but the 2 songs he's appearing with are from different albums. This song is from his album XO. Elliott Smith is one of those artists where I love so many of his songs that I don't necessarily have standout favourites. So for this, these aren't necessarily like my favourite Elliott Smith songs. They're just songs that I thought I do really like. They are particularly special ones to me, and I think you guys will probably like them. So this is Oh Well Okay by Elliott Smith.
Here's the silhouette, the face always turned away, the bleeding color gone to black, dying like a day. Couldn't figure out what made you so unhappy. Shook your head to say no, 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 and stopped for a spell and stayed that way. Oh well, okay.
Wheatley is asking whether number 3 on my ultimate list of artists will appear on this list. They won't, because they don't just been born. Maybe at some point I'll do a countdown of my favourite artists of all time.
Climbing hour upon hour.
You can definitely hear an Elliott Smith Beatles influence as well. Just the production, the choice of chords.
Never fades in the safety of a pitch black mind, an airless cell that blocks the day. Oh well, okay.
Yeah, that's the problem. The great shit shelf, or whatever. I can't quite read the name. Yeah, that's the problem. I don't really have a solidified top 10. You hear the double tracking on Elliott's voice here. That's very Beatles. Who does that?
Let me know, 'cause it's hard to tell, it's hard to say. Oh well.
So if you didn't know, Elliott Smith, fantastic songwriter who never quite broken through into the mainstream. And he was one of many people, many songwriters who tragically died too young. It was never quite clarified whether it was suicide or not, but long story short, he died with a knife wound to the chest. I think he was only 32 or something, and he was someone who had struggled with mental health issues a lot, and in some ways that actually probably stunted his career a bit. Like the story, it's kind of reminiscent of the story of Nick Drake, where their mental health issues and their lack of sort of charisma and self-confidence almost meant that they couldn't quite get the mainstream attention. I don't think Elliott Smith was a big fan of like going on talk shows or doing interviews or playing on TV, that sort of thing. So inevitably the mainstream ignores you. But he's written some of the most devastatingly beautiful songs, and always has this wonderfully understated, intimate sound to his music. Excellent artist. And we'll be listening to some more Elliott Smith later on in this stream. But for now, let's move on Hurt, 9 Inch Nails. This song was first brought to my attention, as I imagine it was for many people actually, by Johnny Cash's amazing cover version. And Johnny Cash's version is fantastic, and I think some people would even claim it's better than this version, particularly when coupled with the context that Johnny Cash was singing it in. But the original version is also excellent. Personally, I wish the verse sections of this song were a little less industrialized, if you know what I mean. I think 9 Inch Nails, they're known for their kind of rough industrial sound. Sometimes music can just be a bit too degraded, if you know what I mean, too distorted, too lo-fi. I love a lo-fi sound, but sometimes it gets on the edge of, okay, I actually would like a bit of, fidelity. But anyway, this is a beautiful song. The chorus in particular is just stunning. This is Hurt by 9 Inch Nails. In millennial animal music, I can see what you mentioned there about people romanticize mental illness in music, and that's very true. And they shouldn't do that. But people like the story of the troubled artist, don't they? But it's not not anything I'd wish upon someone to suffer that way.
The only thing that's real. The needle tears a hole. The old familiar sting. Try to kill it all away, but I remember everything. What have I become? My sweetest friend. Everyone I know goes away in the end. You could have it.
I'm not sure whether the chords are different in this version. I don't think they really are. If they are, it's more that they're just voiced a bit differently. I think the essential chords are the same.
I will let you down. I will make you
This is definitely one of those songs as well which really limits its dynamic. It keeps things quiet long enough that when they then go louder later on for the chorus, it really hits you. It has a real impact, which is something that rock and pop music can really struggle with, because when you're putting a song on the radio, you can't always afford to have quiet bits because it will just blend into the background. But dynamic is such an important part of music.
the state of time.
Something that gets accentuated more in live music because then you've got an audience who are actually paying attention.
Some people, you are someone else. I am still right here. What have I become? My sweetest friend. Everyone I know goes away in the end. If you could have it all,
That changed the dynamic.
my a million miles away. I would keep myself.
That's suddenly the loudest part of the song, right? It just came out of nowhere. I think you can see with that version of the song why it didn't have as much impact as Johnny Cash's one did. Of course, Johnny Cash's one had the story and the big name behind it, but his arrangement was also slightly more conventional. And this is certainly unconventional. Yeah, I think with those cover versions that Johnny Cash did at near the end of his life, I don't think they were necessarily songs that he was introduced to him, that he came across himself and thought, oh, I want to do a version of that. I think different producers brought them to him and suggested it. I think it might have even been Rick Rubin, off the top of my head, who suggested to Johnny Cash that he do a cover of this song. I think I might have made that up. But yeah, how much of... Okay, it stopped. But yeah, we've still got like 30 seconds of noise here. But that's, that's 9 Inch Nails, that's what they do. Anyway, that's the original version of Hurt for anyone who had only ever heard the Johnny Cash version. Let's move on. The Book of Love, The Magnetic Fields. This is drastically different. This song is also another song that was covered by a big name artist, and some people only know that version. Peter Gabriel did a version of this song, and his version's great, but I prefer this one. This album is a triple album of 69 love songs. There are 69 songs on the album. It's quite a substantial album, quite a range on it. The Magnetic Fields, for me, they're in that sort of like anti-folk sort of world, kind of a little bit kooky, but really great lyrics, really kind of fresh take on instrumentation. Like, they don't seem to really follow any sort of template for how they arrange their songs. They kind of they each sound quite different. So let's have a listen to The Book of Love by The Magnetic Fields.
The book of love is long and boring. No one can lift the damn thing. It's full of charts and facts and figures and instructions for dancing. But I love it when you read to me and you can read me anything. The book of love has music in it. In fact, that's where music comes from. Some of it is just transcendental. Some of it is just really dumb. But I love it when you sing to me and you can sing me anything.
American Morrissey. Yeah, I can hear the Morrissey comparison.
The book of love is long and boring and written very long ago. It's full of flowers and heart-shaped boxes and things we're all too young to know. But I love it when you give me things and you love it when you give me
Yeah, this is one of those songs where the lyrics are so tender. They're saying things that are maybe on the fringes of cliche, but not cliche. They're finding new ways to talk about love, which is quite hard to do. But the moment you do it, it just sounds so earnest and hits. And I can see in the chat someone mentioning they're expecting it to like open up in a minute, like more instrumentation to join. But I think that song falls very much into, you know, folk music for me, where the instrumentation is largely just there to set the mood and provide a bed on which the message can be conveyed. So you don't really want too much instrumentation, and I think that song is a great example of that. Beautiful song, The Book of Love. Let's move on to something very different. This is Bullet with Butterfly Wings, the Smashing Pumpkins. I like a lot of Smashing Pumpkins songs. It was difficult to choose one song for this, but I decided in the end to go with this one. Not sure whether Smashing Pumpkins usually get labelled as grunge. I think maybe they're in the grunge era, but maybe not technically grunge. But for me, that grunge-esque 90s rock sound, I can't get enough of it. I love it. That's probably my favourite type of rock music, really. And we're going to be seeing more and more of it as this list continues. This is Bullet with Butterfly Wings, Smashing Pumpkins. Smashing Pumpkins.
The world is a vampire. Sent to drain.
1979 is great too.
Secret destroy.
A bit of a divergence really from their heavier sound, 1979,
Hold you up to the flame.
but this song.
And what do I get for my pain?
This song's got a very cathartic chorus. When it kicks in,
And a piece of the game.
it just makes you want to drive your car twice as fast. Might join the stream in a minute. I need to get my cat her own webcam.
Nothing but an animal. But can you fake it for just one more show? And what do you want? I wanna change. What do you got when you feel the same? Even though I suppose I'll show all my cool like
I love this little rhythmic moment here where this is pushed. There. It's like gives you a little thing to latch onto when the lyric ends. MLV, I can see what you're saying about his voice. I love his voice. It's one of those weird things though about voices in music. It's like there's definitely, you know, with any genre there's like an archetypal voice. You know, maybe the best type of voice you can imagine for it. But then so much character comes from the voice of someone with a less than perfectly technical voice. The Beatles are a great example of that. Particularly with John Lennon.
Despite all my rage, I am still just a rat in a cage. Despite all my rage, I am still just a rat in a cage. someone will say what is lost can never be saved. Despite all my rage, I am still just a rat in a cage. Despite all my rage, I am still just a rat in a Despite all my rage, I am still just a rat in a Despite all my rage, I am still just a rat in a cage. Tell me I'm the only one. Tell me there's no other way. Jesus wasn't all this done for you. And I still believe that I cannot be saved. And I still believe that I cannot be saved. And I still believe that I cannot be saved. And I still believe that I cannot be saved.
Bennett with Butterfly Wings, the Smashing Pumpkins. Number 17 on my list of my personal favourite choices of the 1990s, my top 30 favourite songs from the 1990s. We're almost halfway through the list. In about one song's time, there'll be a recap for anyone who has not kept up or joined us recently. But here we are, one of my favourite artists, yet again an artist taken too early, this time not by suicide or mental illness, but just by tragic accident. Jeff Buckley. Jeff Buckley was very much a rising star when he was taken. He'd released this album, Grace, which was his only real completed studio album in his lifetime. Absolutely fantastic album. If you are only going to record one album in your lifetime, make it great, and that's what he did. This song is just one of the songs I could have chosen from this album for this list. There's loads of good songs on this album. Loads I could have chosen. And at a later date, I'm going to do a stream on songs that were made better by a cover version. And in that stream, I'll be playing his famous version of Hallelujah. But I thought I'd save that for then. Instead, now I'll play you one of Jeff's originals, Lover, You Should Have Come Over. If anyone doesn't know the story of Jeff Buckley's death, I believe he was swimming in a river. He wasn't drunk, he wasn't high or under any influence, but he just got caught in the wake of a boat that went by. He's swimming in the river. I think the sound man, because they were on tour, the sound man was on the side of the river, sat there. One moment he looked up and Jeff was there, one moment he looked up and Jeff had gone, and his body was found, I believe, a few days later maybe. And just a tragic accident.
Looking out the door, I see the rain fall upon the funeral mourners, parading in a wake of sad relations as their shoes fill up with water. Maybe I'm too young.
Wheatley, it's interesting that you mentioned Radiohead there with Motion Picture Soundtrack, because one of the later songs in this list, which is a Radiohead song, was influenced by Jeff Buckley. I'll tell you more about that when we get to it.
Broken down and hungry for your love, with no way to feed it. Where are you tonight, child? You know how much I need it.
Here she is. Say hi.
Too young to hold on.
What's she gonna do? Millie's going to now stand and everything and break
to
it.
just break free and run. Sometimes a man gets carried away. He feels like it should be having his fun, but much too blind
Yeah, his voice is incredibly expressive and with amazing range, both in pitch and in emotion.
Is the room the bed is made? The open window lets the rain in. Burning in the corner is the only one that dreams he had you with him. My body turns and yearns for a sleep that won't ever come. It's never over. My kingdom for a kiss upon her shoulder. It's never over. All my riches for her smiles when I slept so soft against her. It's never over. All my blood for the sweetness of her laughter. It's never over.
Yeah, when it's a lyric like it's never over, hit people where it hurts.
But maybe I'm just too young to keep good love from going wrong.
Everyone needs to listen to this album. This is required reading, this album. Quite undeniably, I would say, one of the best albums of the 1990s.
It should have come over. Yes, that I feel too young to hold on. I'm much too old to break free and run. Too deaf, dumb, and blind to see the damage I've done. The sweet love you should have come over.
Welcome to the chat, Rolio Ander. Thank you so much for saying that you enjoyed my 2000s stream.
It's not too late.
Lover You Should Have Come Over by Jeff Buckley, one of the many amazing songs on that album. If you've not listened to Grace, the only true studio album by Jeff Buckley before he was tragically taken too young, you need to do that. But anyway, in the meantime, let's have a listen to something vastly different. This is Birdhouse in Your Soul by They Might Be Giants. This band, at times you could very much call them a comedy band. They're one of those bands that straddle the line between comedy and just regular old fun music. And some songs of theirs that you might know if you don't know this one are You're Not the Boss of Me, which was the theme song for Malcolm in the Middle, if you remember that. That's another 90s throwback for you. They did a very well-known cover of Istanbul, Not Constantinople, but this was their only true top 40 success. You might be quite astonished that this song was in the top 40. I'm pretty certain it was. Somehow, it's quite a wild song, and we're going to listen to it. I mentioned earlier about dynamics when we were talking about the Nine Inch Nails song. This is another great example of dynamics, but almost this is like a dynamics trick, this song, because basically the first bit of the song starts kind of quiet, and I think they did that on purpose because I think they wanted people to turn their radios up. So then when the chorus hits and it's at full volume, they're now getting blasted by this song. They Might Be Giants with their song Birdhouse. It might be. Something that's amazing about this band. They're ultimately just a duo, right? Before they really kind of blew up, they had this thing called Dial a Song, where, and bearing in mind this would have been the 80s, so they advertised in like phone directories and stuff that you could call their number, dial a song, and it would go through to a answer machine, and you could leave a request for a song you wanted, like an idea for a song. You could say, I want a song that's like about this or whatever, and then they'd write it and then leave it on the answer machine cassette tape for you to then listen to, so that you could call back again later and listen to this song. It was like the internet before the internet. Very, very amazingly resourceful, and something that just kind of, I can't believe people did that sort of stuff before the internet. It's amazing. Anyway, that was They Might Be Giants. Are we going to get a recap, or did I forget to put it in? We get the recap. Okay, so obviously I put this slide in the wrong place. This should have happened the other side of They Might Be Giants. But anyway, this is the recap. This is what we've listened to so far for anyone who hasn't been here since the very beginning, back in the days where my microphone was playing games with us. We've had Blink-182, The Verve, Chemical Brothers, Ocean Colour Scene, Alanis Morissette, Sheryl Crow, Dr. Dre, Beastie Boys, Eminem, DJ Shadow, Elliott Smith, 9 Inch Nails, Magnetic Fields, Smashing Pumpkins, Jeff Buckley, and we just listened to They Might Be Giants, which are blurred out because this slide was meant to be on the other side. Anyway, we're halfway through. And let's continue. I saw some mentions of Ben Folds 5. Ben Folds is one of the few artists who has so far appeared in all three of my streams, in the 2010 one, in the 2000s one, and now in the 90s one. I think this will be the last time we see him in these streams. I doubt he's going to appear in the 1980s one. But this is an excellent song. This is perhaps one of his first kind of commercially successful songs. A great example of storytelling, I think. I think this song really sets the scene that it's trying to tell. Beautiful, piano-focused song, as you can always expect with Ben Folds 5. Not much more to say about that one. Just, I think Ben Folds, whatever he chooses to sing about, he'll tell you the truth, even if it's a very dark truth. And it means a lot of his songs are, even the more positively minded songs of his are actually kind of still dark. But I like that. I think there's no point telling the truth. There's no point trying to make someone feel better about the world if what you're telling them is a lie. Because it will just come around to bite them. So yeah, I think Ben Folds is very good at writing very truthful lyrics. Something very different. Primus. Jerry Was a Race Car Driver. I'm not particularly a fan of Primus. I like Primus, but this song is a weird exception where Primus usually are just a band that I kind of like, but Jerry Was a Race Car Driver is one of my favourite songs ever. It helps that it's very nostalgic for me because this song is on the soundtrack to Tony Hawk's Skateboarder Pro Skater 1 PS1, which I had when I was a kid and was one of my favourite games and had a great soundtrack. I think for a lot of people, those games introduced them to great music. And for me personally, it wasn't until quite a few years later that I guess I had the thought to even look up what the songs were on Tony Hawk's, because I was playing it when I was 10. I wasn't about to go on the internet and start Googling it, but then a few years later I realised all of these songs, I love them so much. They have this wonderful nostalgia, and this is the best one. Primus are a unique sounding band, and that sound comes across in this song, though. The song rocks. Really unique sound. I think that's tapping on the bass. It's a really unique sound.
With
BV as well. Sounds like bees buzzing. It's great.
Captain Pierce is a fireman. Richmond engine number 3. I'll be a wealthy man when I get that dime for all things a man had died to me. Now, Captain Pierce was a strong man, strong as any man alive. Stuck in his craw that made him retire at the age of 65. Dog will hunt.
I love how the guitar solo is like quite set back in the mix with reverb, and the other instruments are really at the front.
Jerry was a race car driver, 22 years old. One too many co-bars one night, wrapped himself around his telephone pole.
What can I say? Jerry was a race car driver. Primus, such an interesting sounding record, and always with a warm place in my heart thanks to that bit of nostalgia from Tony Hawk's. Somebody in the chat earlier was speculating on Losing My Religion by R.E.M., and you were correct. I almost forgot to put the song in this. I'd already made the playlist, and then only like a day ago I thought, oh yeah, Losing My Religion, because I love this song. I think this is one of my favourite songs ever. I guess it just didn't scan in my head as a 90s song, because I guess R.E.M. kind of bridge the 80s and 90s. They're not really defined as, you know, they're not the first band that comes to mind when you think of the 90s. But anyway, Losing My Religion, R.E.M. R.E.M. are such an interesting band. They've got such a range of different songs. Lots of different sounds to their songs. Sometimes it's very light-hearted, and sometimes it's quite dark. And this is one of the dark ones. Losing My Religion, R.E.M.
Oh, life is bigger. It's bigger than you, and you are not me. The links that I will go to, the
really love the idea of losing your religion as a metaphor for losing your sort of, I don't know, faith in yourself, faith in the relationship. I'm not completely sure exactly what REM is singing about here, but losing your religion, losing your faith in God, is such a devastating idea. Suddenly realizing this all-loving, all-present, all-knowing deity who looked after you is not only gone, but was never there in the first place.
Just a dream. That was just a dream. That's me in the corner. That's me in the spotlight, losing my religion, trying to keep up with you, and I don't know if I can do it.
Thinking about coming on my chair, but
I'm now sad too much. I haven't said enough.
yeah, I think I saw you try. Maybe lyric.
I thought that I heard you sing. I think I thought I saw you try. But that was just a dream. Try, cry, why try? That was just a dream. Just a dream. Just a dream.
Losing My Religion, REM. Not only number 12 on my top songs of the 1990s, but one of my favourite songs of all time, I'd say. Beautiful song. And probably my favourite song to use a mandolin. I need to buy myself a mandolin at some point. 1991. Alright. I think no list of 90s music would be complete without at least acknowledging the existence of this band. This band were effectively the frontrunners, the poster children of grunge, which was basically everyone deciding that hair metal wasn't any good, which I agree with. If you kind of follow the logical line of rock music from the 1960s, well, not even the 1950s. 1950s, you have like rock and roll, Elvis, Chuck Berry, all that stuff. Then bands like the Beatles and the Stones pick that up and do their own thing with it. By the end of the 60s, it's turned into what you could start calling hard rock with like Led Zeppelin, Sabbath. Then into the like later 70s, into the 80s, you start getting truly what people would refer to as metal. But then something weird happened, and the metal kind of went all really glam and weird and over the top and bombastic, and grunge was a way of kind of bringing it back to what rock music kind of had been, pulling it back to some of its punkier roots, some of its even pulling it maybe as far back as some of the bands as like the Kinks, like their approach to songwriting. The only difference was, unlike the Kinks, Nirvana had far more distortion pedals. Anyway, there's many Nirvana songs that could have made this list. I think In Bloom is maybe my favourite, and that's why it's on this list.
Nirvana!
see you mentioning in the chat. Are you mentioning a film called After Sun? I haven't heard of that. You guys seem to be a big fan of it. Is it something I should watch? I'll take note. After Sun. I have no idea. What's it about? Also, I'm sorry that I've chosen the version of the song that has the crowd screaming. The novelty of that has worn off. Nirvana, another band who are, I think, sometimes seem.
Everybody, let's hear it for these three nice.
They can shut up. Nirvana are another band who I think sometimes, because they were so wildly successful and now are just so iconic, it sometimes seems as a bit kind of like basic and entry level to, praise them, particularly anything from the Nevermind album. But there's a reason why this album and this artist are so iconic and so lasting and timeless now. They're just great. It's great music. So there you go, In Bloom, Nirvana, and here we are with our second to last recap of what we've already gone through. I don't know who has been here since the beginning. If anyone remembers not just the first technical difficulties we had, but the second, if you're still here after all of that, you're doing really well. I have now been through 20 of my top 30 songs of the 1990s. Had a whole range of artists here. I won't name all of them now, but we're now moving into the top 10. So now these are songs that I really, really like. My top 10 songs of the 1990s, starting with Balls on Parade, Rage Against the Machine. I saw some people talking about whether I would choose Killing in the Name Of, which is, of course, a really good song. Rage are another band where there's loads of songs by Rage that I really like. So there's not necessarily one that stands out to me as, okay, that's the one I'll put in the list. I knew they had to be in the list. But Balls on Parade for me, not only a fantastic song, rocks really hard, but I have very fond memories of playing it on Guitar Hero as well. So Balls on Parade, Rage Against the Machine. 10 on my top 30 songs from the 1990s. We're very much in the final countdown now. Let's move on to number 9. Somebody mentioned earlier Everlong, Foo Fighters. Can't remember who it was. Hopefully they're still here. But here we are. And can you believe it? The Foo Fighters have outranked Nirvana on my list. Of course, anyone, I don't know, maybe someone in the chat doesn't know this, but Dave Grohl, who you can see on screen here, who is the singer and lead songwriter of Foo Fighters, was the drummer of Nirvana. And I find that to be so impressive. Like, it's one thing for an artist, like maybe if the guitarist from a band goes on and has a future project that does really well, that's really impressive. Like Damien Albarn from Blur, he was the lead songwriter and lead singer of Blur, and then he made Gorillaz, and that was even bigger. But he was the lead singer and songwriter of Blur, and then was the lead singer and songwriter of Gorillaz. So it kind of made sense. Here, Dave Grohl went from being the drummer of Nirvana to being the lead singer-songwriter of Foo Fighters and playing guitar instead of drums. Just such a talented man. Such an unbelievably talented man. Foo Fighters are a great band. One of my favourite bands from the 90s. And Everlong is my favourite Foo Fighters song. Let's move on. Number 8. And here is what you probably won't be surprised is our first of 2 Radiohead songs that are going to appear on this list. Fake Plastic Trees from their album The Bends. I mentioned earlier that there was a Jeff Buckley connection to Radiohead, and that is that with this song, Fake Plastic Trees, Radiohead didn't really know what direction to take it in when they had it. And then they went to see Jeff Buckley live, and the story goes that Tom York came away from that gig having witnessed Jeff Buckley's performance of that song, and he recorded with an acoustic guitar a few takes of Fake Plastic Trees, and then that was it. The band came in the next day and overdubbed their parts, and that's the version we know. Because I think, at least from what the video I was watching the other day, what they were saying is that Tom York, and initially he thought all of this like falsetto singing he does, like singing in the high range, he thought it was maybe like not very, it didn't sound good and it was maybe too feminine. And I think listening to Jeff Buckley sing, he realized actually falsetto can absolutely rock and can be amazing. So that gave him the kind of the confidence to give us the timeless performance that we have on this song. Beautiful lyrics, that album, The Bends, that song came from. I think The Bends nowadays gets overshadowed a bit because, after The Bends, OK Computer, Kid A, In Rainbows, so many classic albums, each with their own sound. But The Bends was a fantastic album, and you have to remember at that point, before The Bends came out, many people had already written Radiohead off as kind of one-hit wonders with Creep. And the Bends proved them wrong, and they suddenly showed how many good songs they had left to write. Absolutely love it. Can't beat some Radiohead. Crowded House, number 7 on the list. Crowded House. Crowded House, a bit like R.E.M., are a band who bridge that gap between the 80s and the 90s. You can hear with them, much like with R.E.M., where bands started putting away the synthesizers. They'd had fun with the synthesizers, don't get me wrong, but then they started returning to their guitars for what would be, a very guitar-driven decade, the 1990s. 4 Seasons in One Day is a beautifully tender song by Crowded House. As you can imagine, Crowded House will probably make an appearance next week as well in the 1980s stream. But here we are with 4 Seasons in One Day. Crowded House.
Four seasons in one day, lying in the depths of your imagination, worlds above and worlds below. The sun shines on the black clouds hanging over the domain. Even when you're feeling warm, the temperature could drop away. Like 4 seasons in one day. Smiling as the
chat.
shit comes down.
Maureen A.
You can tell a man
Yes,
from
Crowded
what
House.
he
I
has
saw that
to
Weekly said
say.
he hadn't heard of Crowded House.
Everything gets
They've got some
turned
catching up to do. They've got at
around.
least
And I
5
will risk my neck again.
gold standard classic songs, and at least another 5 pretty good songs
You can
after.
take me where you will.
I think they're from New Zealand, making them one of the most worthy artists I can think of from New Zealand.
Like all the things you can't explain. 4 seasons in one day. Blood dries up like rain, like rain. Fills my cup like 4
I love
seasons
this like organ solo here.
one day.
And the way the guitar solo is kind of chasing it. Counterpoint.
Doesn't pay to make predictions, sleeping on an unmade bed. Finding out wherever there is comfort, there is pain. Only one step away. Like 4 seasons in one day. Blood dries up like rain, like rain. Fills my cup like 4 seasons in one day.
Beautiful. Yeah, Crowded House, they definitely they're one of those bands that has obviously listened to the Beatles quite a lot. Not in a really overt way, but you can just kind of feel the characteristics of the Beatles coming through in some of their songs. And yeah, they're one of those bands where there's not necessarily one album of theirs where I think, oh yeah, that's like my favourite album. But they've got at least 5 to 10 songs which are just absolute classics. Can we include remasters in this list? I'm afraid not. That would slightly change the odds of certain artists turning up. But anyway, we're getting into the last few songs in this list. If you're just joining us, I'm running through my top 30 songs of the 1990s. A couple of weeks ago, I did my top songs of the 2010s. Then I did the 2000s. Now we're on the 1990s. Of course, as you can imagine, we're then going to do the 80s next week, 70s, 60s, 50s. Probably stop there. Anyway, we listened to Elliott Smith earlier. We're going to listen to him again. This is from a different album of his. This is from his album Either Or. If you've not listened to Elliott Smith before, you need to. He's one of those artists that I would describe as your favourite artist's favourite artist. At least with a lot of alternative artists that are around today. If you ask them who their favourite artist is, Elliott Smith will be higher in the list. I know that Phoebe Bridgers, who is one of my absolute favourite artists of all time, she is a massive Elliott Smith fan, and you can hear it in her music. Elliott Smith has a way of quietly and calmly being devastatingly emotional. He's not like overly emotional. It's very like restrained and somber and yet heartbreaking. Let's have a listen. Between the Bars, Elliott Smith.
Drink up, baby, stay up all night with the things you could do. You won't, but you might. The potential.
Yeah, Oscar on the Beatles list on the 60s.
Never see.
I will only be able to play 2 Beatles songs. That is the hard limit. There can only be 2 songs from any given artist.
Drink up with me now and forget all about the pressure of days. Do what I say and I'll make you okay and drive them away. The images stuck in your head. People you've been before that you don't want around anymore, that push and shove and won't bend to your will. I'll keep them still. Drink up, baby. Look at the
You can hear how Elliott Smith so often double-tracked his vocals. You can hear in the 2 stereo channels 2 vocal performances which are actually different and create that kind of nice chorusy effect between them. Something that the Beatles did a lot.
Drink up one more time and I'll make you mine. Keep you apart, deep in my heart, separate from the rest. Where I like you the best and keep the things you forgot. People you've been before that you don't want around anymore, that push and shove and won't bend to your will. I'll keep them still.
That's it. Like I was saying earlier, Elliott Smith is one of those artists who has so many good songs. So many. That there's not really one that sticks out for me. That's the obvious one I'm going to put in this list. So I would by no means say that the 2 that I've included in this list really represent his output in its full glory. I could listen to Elliott Smith all day. Also, fun fact: did you know he's not actually called Elliott Smith? He was called Steve, but he felt like that name Steve Smith sounded too much like a jock, so he decided to change it to Elliott. And spelled it with 2 T's as well, which is quite distinctive. Oops. Pressed the wrong button. Anyway. This is the final recap. We are about to enter the top 5 songs, my top 5 favourite songs of the 1990s. We've seen all sorts of artists. Have you got any guesses? Any speculation about who will be in these final 5? I've kind of given a couple hints. But at this point, it's probably hard to keep track of who hasn't and who has made the cut. Any guesses? Fiona Apple. I'm afraid Fiona Apple didn't make the cut for this. I do love Fiona Apple's work, but she's not a sort of top 30 artist for me. Californication. Not Californication, but quite possibly some other chilies. Amadeus has got the right idea. Aphex Twin, that's a good shout, but once again, not necessarily something that would make my top 30. Yes, so yeah, like I was mentioning just a minute ago, Phoebe Bridgers is a massive fan of Elliott Smith. She is obsessed with Elliott Smith, to be honest, and I love that. And basically, there's a bunch of artists that kind of either work with or have collaborated with Phoebe Bridgers who all seem to be obsessed with Elliott Smith. So in my head, I called them the Elliott Smith fan club. An artist who is definitely a big fan of Elliott Smith and has worked very closely with Phoebe Bridgers is Christian Lee Hutson, who is another guy who you should definitely check out if you like Elliott Smith or Phoebe Bridgers. He's coming up as one of my favourite artists ever. And I think at some point I will do I'm doing these lists, obviously. I'm doing these countdowns, top 30s of the 90s, 80s, 70s, etc. Obviously, I'm actually going to do one for the 2020s. Although we are only 1/3 of the way through, what I'll do to compensate for that is do a shorter list. But I mention that because Christian Lee Hutson watch his name. His name will be on that list. Anyway, here we are in the final 5. And at number 5 is Weezer.
Oh yeah. Alright. Somebody's honey is drowning my icebox. Somebody's cold one is giving me chills. Guess I'll just close my eyes. Oh yeah. Alright. Feels good inside. Flip on the telly, wrestle with Jimmy. Something is bubbling behind my back. The bottle is ready to blow. Saturday night soul, your drug is a heartbreaker.
Continue with number 4 on the list, which is Closing Time by Semisonic. This is a song that I only became familiar with in more recent years, despite the fact it's been out for a long time. I think I only kind of first came across the song a couple of years ago, maybe, but I absolutely love it. I absolutely love the lyrical theme of it. There's a fantastically poignant lyric in there about every new beginning came from some other new beginning's end, and that is such a good lyric to hear when something big in your life is ending. For me, my first big job as a musician, my first big piano residency after I left university was working at this restaurant in my hometown as a piano player. I worked there. I was playing there multiple times a week. I was very involved there. I knew the staff really well. It was like a little home away from home for me. I was there for 5 years, and then reasonably abruptly it ended because the business changed hands. And I remember taking some solace in this song. And of course, they were right. Semisonic were right. Although that was the ending of something, it was also the new beginning of something new, which was basically me doing this YouTube thing. So, yeah, every new beginning comes from some other new beginning's end. Semisonic, Closing Time.
Closing time. Open all the doors and let you out into the world. Closing time. Turn all of the lights on over every boy and every girl. Closing time. One last call for alcohol, so finish your whiskey or beer. Closing time. You don't have to go home, but you can't stay here. I know who I want to take me home. I know who I want to take me home. I know who I want to take me home. Take me home. Closing time. beginning's end. Yeah, I know who I want to take me home. I know who I want to take me home. I know who I want to take me home. Take me home. Closing time, time for you to go out to the places you will be from. I know who I want to take me home. I know who I want to take me home. I know who I want to take me home. Take me home. Closing time. Every new beginning comes from some other beginning's end.
Closing time. Semisonic. Once again, it's one of those lyrics in that song where it's just on the fringe of like sounding a bit cheesy and cliche, but when you're going through something in your life where that lyric can help you out and gives you a bit of perspective, I think it hits pretty hard. So there we are, closing time. Semisonic. Can we get to the end of this list without my microphone breaking again? Let's find out. We've only got 3 songs left. And there was mention earlier of Blur. Would Blur appear on this list? And yes, they will. And Blur are one of my favourite bands of the 90s. They have a whole range of different songs, really, quite a vast array of style. I often think about that when people compare Oasis with Blur. To me, there's no comparison because Oasis basically wrote 3 songs and then rewrote them various other times in the sense that their style is fairly consistent. And if you like that style, then that's cool. But there's only so much distance I think you can get out of that. Whereas a band like Blur, they changed their sound quite a lot. And this song, for example, is drastically different from some of the earlier stuff. And when I say earlier stuff, I mean stuff that came out only 3 years prior. So this is Tender by Blur, one of my absolute favourite songs of all time. I remember when I saw it live, I saw Blur live at their reunion concert at Hyde Park, their first concert they played together for a long time. And you'll hear in a minute, if you're not familiar with the song, it begins with a simple vocal part going, "Oh my baby, oh my baby." The crowd wouldn't stop singing that. After the song had ended, the crowd just kept singing it for about 5 minutes unaccompanied. And that was amazing. Anyway, Tender by Blur.
demons go away. Lord, I need to find someone who can heal my mind. Come on, come on, come on, get through it. Come on, come on, come on, love's the greatest thing. Come on, come on, come on, get through it. Come on, come on, come on.
Amadeus, for dinner today, I had
I'm waiting for that feeling.
wraps, chicken wraps. But they weren't chicken, they were vegan chicken.
Waiting for that feeling to come.
Here's the old mother in bed. Yeah, I can see some of you in the chat discussing how Blur, particularly in America, are only really known for Song 2, which is a bit of a shame really, because Song 2 is really not very reflective of their style as a whole. If anything, Song 2 was actually started as a joke song, kind of parodying Nirvana grunge music, and then went on and became a hit anyway. But in the UK, Blur are really well known because they were the rivals of Oasis. And there was this whole thing in the press about the battle of Britpop, but Oasis managed to, at least in part, break America with songs like Wonderwall. Blur never quite made the same impact. And Gorillaz, of course, is the project of Damon Albarn, who's the lead singer of Blur. Gorillaz was far more successful than Blur ever.
Love's the greatest thing that we have. I'm waiting for that feeling. Waiting for that feeling. Waiting for that feeling to come. Oh my baby, oh my baby, oh my. Oh my baby, oh my baby, oh I, oh my. Come on, come on, come on. Get through it. Come on, come on, come on. Love's the greatest thing. Come on, come on, come on. Get through it. Come on, come on, come on.
And that was Tender by Blur. I saw a few people mentioning, that they don't know Blur as well. I would suggest songs to get you into them, maybe, to be Beetle Bum. That's a great song. Country House, that's a good song. And End of a Century, also a great song. But they've got loads of great songs. And they even appeared in last week's list. They just about scraped into the 2000s list with their song Music Is My Radar. Anyway, that's enough about Blur. Let's get on with this list. Number 2, the second to last song, the penultimate song on my list of my favourite songs of the 1990s is Red Hot Chili Peppers with Under the Bridge. There was definitely some speculation about whether or not there would be Red Hot Chili Peppers in this list, or at least what it would be. Some people were saying Californication, which certainly could have been on the list. But for me, Under the Bridge is just such a good song. Beautiful piece of music. Quite a unique song, really. There's a few songs I can think of that sound quite like this. You can obviously hear influences that led into this song, quite notably Jimi Hendrix, for example, but it's a beautiful piece of music. And little fun fact, the outro bit, when we get the gospel sort of choir moment, I think that was the gospel choir was the choir of one of their mums. So it was either Anthony Kiedis' mum or John Frusciante's mum. I can't remember. But yeah, there you go. Under the Bridge. Also, take note, it begins in the key of F sharp, and then when the verse kicks in, it jumps down to the key of E. Just a random key change, but it works.
Sometimes I feel like I don't have a partner. Sometimes I feel like my only friend is the city I live in, the city of angel. Lonely as I am, together we cry. Drive on the streets 'cause she's my companion. I walk through the hills 'cause she knows who I am. She sees my good deeds and she kisses me windy. And I never worry, now that is a lie. I don't ever
So you mentioning Flea again, his acting career. We were chatting about this in the last stream. Flea plays Needles in Back to the Future, and he plays one of the supporting characters in Baby Driver. He's like, I can't remember what his name is in that, but he's just some like hired goon in that. He always plays the same character. He's always the dodgy guy.
There's nobody out there. It's hard to believe that I'm all alone. At least I have her love. The city she loves me. Lonely as I am, together we cry.
Lovely major 7 chord there. Dum.
I don't ever wanna feel like I did that day. Take me to the place I love. Take me all the way. I don't ever wanna.
I really love songs where they kind of save a bit to the end. Like they don't give you everything, they make you wait for it. And this is an example of that.
Take me
Release. Drums enter. We enter a chord progression that we've not had yet. And this will carry us through to the end. Truly one of my favourite songs of all time. Under the Bridge, Red Hot Chili Peppers. And then to the lovely T.S. de Picardy, which is when a passage of music in the minor key ends with the major tonic chord. Anyway, we're finally here. My favourite song of the 1990s. We're about to listen to my favourite song of the 1990s. There's been a lot of speculation. I think we all know it's some sort of Radiohead song. One person has correctly identified it so far in the chat. Drum roll indeed. It is Paranoid Android. It's sometimes hard for me to choose my favourite song from the OK Computer album. OK Computer is such a good album. But Paranoid Android pushes above the rest for me. It's such an amazing piece of music. It's one of those pieces of music where if you ever come to try and learn it, you'll realise how intricate this thing is, how many different moving parts there are. It's truly the moment where Radiohead went from being just a simple rock band to being something that a bit more progressive. Absolutely sensational song, a true journey of a song as well. Let's have a listen. Paranoid. And that's it. That's my top 30 songs of the 1990s. We got through it, guys. The mic survived. You can still hear me, which is, the least I would expect, but there we go. Thank you for sticking with me, for surviving the various technical difficulties we've had. But here we go. That was it. Next week, I'm not doing any streams, but the following week I'll be back. You can look at the schedule on my Twitch channel. A stream that you might be interested in if you are a songwriter or a composer of some sort is a stream I'm going to be doing where I review, give feedback on some of your music. I'll be asking for submissions a few days before, but if you already have a submission that a song that you would like me to give some feedback on during a stream, then perhaps send it to me in an email or something like that. But keep an eye out on my YouTube community post as well, because that's where I'll be asking people for submissions. I'll also be, of course, doing streams like this, but for the 80s, the 70s, 60s, 50s, and I think also the 2020s. So there's plenty more to come. And hopefully by the next stream, I would have fixed my microphone situation. But anyway, thank you again, everyone, for watching. I'm going to sign off now because I don't want to try my luck anymore with this microphone. But thank you for watching. And check out the schedule, as I said, for information on when the next one will be. Thanks again. Goodbye.